Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the Product Challenge Ring. And now the products are in the ring and they are ready. In the far corner we have from Ranger wearing pink and black and white, weighing in at 2 ounces, a veteran craft supply found in crafty tool caddies around the world. Known the world over for its fine tip and hard, clear, glossy finish, the people's champion, Glossy Accents! And his opponent across the ring from Tonic Studios, wearing white and silver and weighing in at 1 ounce. A relative rookie playing the crafty circuit since 2016, beloved by crafters everywhere, mixed media artists, and enamel dot enthusiasts. With its fancy gem lid and glossy moves, the amazing Nuvo Crystal Drops! Hi guys, so I'm just going to try something here and I thought I'd try it on video just in case it goes well, or even if it doesn't go well, just to share the outcome of this. So this comes about from a conversation I was having on social media with Harmony, who is one of my tiaras over on Patreon. We were talking about using glossy accents or using Nuvo drops as a way to make enamel dots. And Harmony had this wonderful idea, which is to use hole punched pattern paper and then maybe put glossy accents over it as an option for making, I guess, patterned paper versions of enamel dots. So I'm going to give that a try and just see how it goes, because I happen to have both. I have Nuvo drops in clear, and I also have glossy accents. Okay, so I am hoping that this punch will do a better job. Yes, makes much nicer circles. Here, this is out of a 6x6 paper pad, so it probably will do a better job of having obvious patterns. Yes, it does. Perfect. Ooh, I think these are going to be pretty. What a great idea. This is what I love about YouTube and the scrapbooking community, is that there's so many great ideas out there, and I love how people share all their brilliant ideas with one another. It makes me not want to use the purple ones at all, because I like the patterns. So that's what kind of makes this idea so unique, is that you can have patterned enamel dots, if this works. So we'll take a variety of different sizes, some of the big ones, some of the small ones. This one is going to be glossy accents, and this one is going to be Nuvo drops. So let's get started. My nozzle clogged in that much time. Seriously? There we go. I'd rather that happen, because that clears it out. The other way, that when you poke it with a needle, you're just poking the clog back in, and so it'll eventually come out somewhere. So here we go, putting some glossy accents on this. And I'm just kind of like moving it around so that it covers up the whole. Let me zoom in. So let me show you that again. There we go. There we go. Oh, those look really nice. Well, I don't know how they're going to dry, but so far it's looking pretty positive for the glossy accents. All right, so now let's do the Nuvo drops and see how they work. These are again the clear Nuvo drops. I store these upside down so that I don't get any bubbles in them. There we go. All right. So we shall see how this experiment works. I'm going to leave these overnight and then I'll come back and show you how they look, and I'll also just show you how the other ones looked that I made on paper and on the glossy paper. Hi guys, I'm here with the results of my Nuvo Crystal Drops versus Glossy Accents challenge, and this challenge is not comparing these two products in every sense, but just looking at these two products in terms of how they perform for creating faux enamel dots using patterned paper hole punches. So to get these kind of patterned enamel dot lookalikes. And so I do have my original trial right here, which I will tell you about, but to make my initial comparison a little bit easier, I'm actually using trial 2, which you may not have seen in the video where I was doing this. So there are a few things that I've noticed. This is Glossy Accents on the right, and then this is Nuvo Drops here on the left. A few things that I've noticed in both trials is that the Glossy Accents has a slightly warmer, almost a yellowy tone to it, whereas the Nuvo Crystal Drops maintained their true, like they are actually completely clear and maintained the true color of the pattern paper. That's also the case in this first trial, and I will explain why I did a second trial and what the difference between these is. You can see quite noticeably here that the Glossy Accents dots, which are all of these ones, are noticeably more yellow than these ones, which are the Nuvo Crystal Drops. I put an extra dab of Nuvo Crystal Drops on these two as they were drying, just to see if I could build them up and make them even more dimensional, and that did not work very well. I will show you that there's a little crack in each of these ones that I added. So what I did was I dried the initial dot and then I added another drop of Nuvo Crystal Drops right on top of it, and that gave me not a whole lot more height, but it did give me a little crack in this one. I'm hoping that you can see that. If I show it at various angles, it might show up, and to a lesser extent a little bit of a crack in this one. And that has been my experience with Nuvo Crystal Drops. Whenever you make a large shape that's not a circle, it tends to crack. So all of these shapes here and here, for example, I managed to get Chloe with very little cracking, but a little bit there. So most of these shapes tend to crack. They're really best when you use it as a dot. And so now we know that when you layer dots on top of dots, you do run the risk of cracking. So that's the first thing that I noticed, is that the Glossy Accents has a slight yellow look to it, whereas the Nuvo Crystal Drops maintains its original color. Now, when we look at this, I'm going to put this below me. Hopefully that will help. When we look at the dimension of these, I want you to see that they're really similar in terms of dimension. So right now, the Nuvo Drops are the closest to me, and that's how the dimension looks on the Nuvo Crystal Drops. And now, the Glossy Accents are closest to me, and that's how the dimension looks on the Glossy Accents. Glossy Accents are on the left and Nuvo Drops are on the right. You can see the profile here. I couldn't get it focused very well. So really similar results in terms of how dimensional these dots are, and that really surprises me. I thought that Nuvo Crystal Drops would hold much more dimension and that Glossy Accents would kind of flatten out over time, like as it dries, because that has been my experience as I've used it. However, I usually only use it when I'm filling a really large space, so I've never really tried to fill a little tiny circle of punched pattern paper with it. So now we know that the Glossy Accents actually does a pretty decent job of holding its dimension, as you can see right there. And again, relative to the Nuvo Drops, which are right there. One of my Nuvo Drops actually didn't get very much dimension at all, but I suspect that I just put less on that one. That's why that one is noticeably smaller than the others. The other measure that I have is clarity. And as far as clarity goes, I find that Glossy Accents are slightly cloudy, but pretty decent clarity. You can see through to the tiny little pattern below. When it comes to Nuvo Drops, however, clarity is good except for when it's not. So we have excellent clarity here, and then boop, we have a little air bubble in there, and an air bubble in there, and an air bubble in there. In fact, the reason I did the second trial was because as this one dried, I noticed there were air bubbles in almost all of these ones. So air bubble, 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 and there are no air bubbles in the Glossy Accents at all. And the interesting thing about the dots that have these air bubbles in them from the Nuvo Drops is that I could not tell that those air bubbles were in there as I was using the drops or as they dried. It wasn't until they were almost completely dried that I was able to see that there were air bubbles inside of these drops. And that means that I wasn't able to poke or figure out how I could maybe get rid of those air bubbles. Or if I was making these for a project, I wouldn't know that I need to try again until I had already let it dry. So that is a little bit problematic. When I hold this paper sideways, you may see even better the air bubbles that I'm talking about. They kind of stand out quite a bit when you look at it on an angle. So again, that's the top row here. These are the Nuvo Drops, and many of them, except for the two biggest ones, many of them have these little annoying air bubbles in them. Ah! So as far as clarity goes, I think that it's really, each one loses a point for that. So Nuvo Drops has such a frequency. I mean, if it was just once in a while, I would say that's fine, we'll give it a pass. But the frequency of these air bubbles is just not good enough for me to be able to rely on this to make enamel dots in this way with these little paper punches. And then as far as the clarity goes for the Glossy Accents, the fact that some of them are kind of cloudy, a lot of them are actually kind of cloudy. So this one, this one, this one, and this one all have this cloudiness to it in trial 1. And then for this one, we have cloudiness in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, all but the tiniest ones have a cloudiness to them. And it's actually not all that glossy. Like, despite the fact that Glossy Accents is part of the name, it has a little bit of a matted look to it, especially compared to the super shiny finish that you get with the Nuvo Drops. And maybe you'll see it here as well, that there's just this little bit of a matted finish to the Glossy Accents compared to super shiny finish on the Nuvo Drops. So I have rated these two mediums on 4 different dimensions. We have color, dimension, clarity, and finish. So for color, as I mentioned, Nuvo Drops maintains the color of the paper underneath, whereas Glossy Accents has a bit of yellow, so I gave a point to Nuvo Drops there. as far as dimension goes, they both do a really good job of holding a nice dimensional dome. Both dimensions have some flaws when it comes to clarity. Nuvo drops frequently had air bubbles in them that were unable to be seen until it was already dried, so it was already too late to try to figure out a solution or to make a new one. And for glossy accents, there was a slight cloudiness in some of them that prevented you from seeing the pattern paper below. As far as finish goes, Nuvo drops got a point for having a glossier finish than glossy accents, which does not live up to its namesake in this testing, and has a little bit of slight matting on the product as it dries into a dome shape. So that means we've got Nuvo Crystal Drops coming in at 3 and Glossy Accents coming in at 1. Nuvo Drops is the clear winner here, but I just want to mention that this is just thinking about these products in terms of making faux enamel dots using punched pieces of patterned paper. So I think that Glossy Accents certainly has its place in your craft caddy. It makes a wonderful adhesive, and it really does make a really great glossy coating when you want to add glossy accents to something. And Nuvo Drops does a wonderful job because it comes in so many different colors, and especially the gloss finishes look so much like enamel dots when they're dried, and you can just kind of pop these off once they're dry and then glue it right onto your project, and you've got this awesome little pink enamel dot or black or whatever color you need. As I mentioned, it's hit or miss when it comes to making shapes with these, but as far as making dots, I think the Nuvo Crystal Drops are awesome. And they dry really strong too, so I'm kind of pressing it with my thumbnail, and I'm not getting a little indent in it. These are several months old, but they are definitely not taking any indents from my thumbprint. I've seen some other people who have found that fingernail imprints are left in these dots when they're fresh, like within the next 24 or 48 hours or so. I haven't had that problem with mine, so it could be different based on maybe the humidity level. It is wintertime here, so the humidity is quite low, but all of these ones that I did several months ago are all very, very firm and hard. Certainly not as hard as an actual enamel dot, which is quite hard. It's more of a plasticky hard, so it's got a little bit of give, but it doesn't really dent. So this is how the glossy accents came out on this kind of a paper. So this is one of those glossy backings from my printer paper. And it's interesting to see that the clarity and finish on glossy accents when you put it on this kind of a surface seems to be great compared to the clarity and finish when you put it on a piece of paper. So it could be that there's something about how paper reacts to glossy accents that makes it different. So these would still make really beautiful water droplets on a page, for example. Little fake water droplets. These are ones that I put on straight onto the paper, but this is the one that I just peeled off of the other paper and put in place. So that is good to know. That's glossy accents, and then these are my rows of Nuvo Crystal Drops that I made. Now I can peel all these off and put them in a little dish, and then I'll have all kinds of little clear droplets to use on any of the projects that I want to make. So I guess what this means is that if you were trying to make patterned enamel dots using punched out pieces of pattern paper, which I think is a wonderful idea that Harmony came up with in my Patreon page. I think that you could do it with either medium. So if you already have glossy accents and you do not have clear Nuvo drops, I would say go ahead and give it a try and do it with the supplies that you have. These are a little bit more yellowy and they're a little bit cloudy, but they still look really great in my opinion. When you put them side by side with the Nuvo Crystal Drops, you can definitely notice a little bit of cloudiness and the finish isn't quite as glossy. But on their own, I think they still make really pretty accents to add to your pages. And then if you happen to already have Nuvo Crystal Drops in your stash, they do make great enamel dots with patterns on them like this, but just keep in mind that some of them will dry with little air bubbles in them, and it'll be really hard to tell until they're fully dried which ones have an air bubble in them and which ones don't. Nevertheless, they do look really cute even with the air bubbles in them. So if you're a perfectionist, you might want to make a bunch of extras and then just get rid of the ones with air bubbles in them. But if you don't mind that look, especially on a water layout, I think that looks fine. It kind of looks like little bubbles within bubbles. So depending on what you're using them for and what your taste is, you might not mind those little air bubbles that show up. So thanks so much for watching this showdown. The clear winner in this case is Nuvo Drops, but glossy accents ain't too shabby either. Take care and have a really great scrappy week. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to watch this fun little video that I created for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any video requests, just let me know. Special thanks to these diamond tiaras who support me over on Patreon and allow me to continue to bring process videos and fun little videos like this one occasionally as well. If you're new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button in the middle of your screen and check out the other videos here if you'd like to see more from me. Take care and have a really great scrappy week.